Born into wealth but locked in darkness, young Oliver Bracewell had never seen his father's face. Doctors called it a tragedy of birth. His father called it a curse. But when a barefoot little girl walked into their mansion uninvited, she carried the light no one knew existed, and the truth everyone was too afraid to see. Welcome to a brand new story. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an update. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I've got another exciting story lined up that you won't want to miss. Now, let's get back to the story. David Bracewell said quietly, "Then what are you saying, doctor? That after 8 years and every surgery money can buy, there's still nothing?" He hangs up, exhales sharply, and stares out the window. Down below, he sees Oliver sitting alone, motionless, like a statue in his own home. For a long moment, David just watches, his jaw tightening. The weight of guilt and loss presses on him. The memory of his late wife, Julia, flashes briefly. Her laughter, the hospital room, then silence. David blinks. Laughter? He leans forward. A small barefoot girl, her hair unkempt, dress torn, and a broken doll clutched in her hand, tiptoes near the pool. She's dirty, clearly out of place, but fearless. Oliver tilts his head, sensing her presence. He said softly, "Who's there?" Nevaeh answered, "Someone who's lost." She giggles, a sound that echoes like sunlight through clouds. Then she steps closer and places her small hands gently over his eyes. "Now we're both blind," she said. Then, unexpectedly, Oliver laughs. The staff rushed out, startled. No one in the mansion has heard that laugh in years. But inside the office, David freezes. His phone slips from his hand. His son, laughing? He rushes outside. By the pool, his blind son is smiling, really smiling, while a dirty little girl dances barefoot in circles, her laughter filling the air. But something about her face, her necklace, makes David stop. A small pendant glints against her chest, the same one his late wife Julia used to wear. David's world has just tilted. But what does this pendant mean? If you're as curious as I am, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Is Nevaeh tied to the past? Stay tuned and you'll find out. In the meantime, David's breath catches, his world tilts. David whispers, "Where did you get that?" Nevaeh looks up at him, innocent and curious. She said, "From the big tree behind your house. It was shiny, so I kept it." For 8 years, David Bracewell had searched for every cure money could buy, every test, every surgery, every prayer. None of it brought his son sight or peace, but on that morning when a hungry barefoot stranger walked into their lives, she didn't just bring laughter. She brought back the past, the part he buried beneath that very tree. Machines beep. Julia's voice whispers faintly, "Promise me, David, if anything happens, find the light hidden in darkness." Her voice faded into the hum of machines, then silence. David's eyes opened. Present day. The same echo had haunted him for 8 years. He stood by the pool now, staring at the small, barefoot girl who had somehow walked into his mansion and stirred a ghost he thought he'd buried. Nevaeh was spinning in circles, laughing as the morning sun bounced off the surface of the water. Oliver sat beside her, his white cane resting on the ground, his head tilted toward her voice, his smile wide and free. She covered his eyes with her tiny hands and giggled. "Now we're both blind," she said. Oliver laughed, A sound so pure and unexpected that everyone froze. The maids at the doorway gasped. The gardeners looked up from the hedges. The sound didn't belong in this house. It was too alive, too new. David's chest tightened. For 8 years, he'd never heard that sound from his son. Not once. He took a slow step forward, as if afraid to break the spell. Oliver's laughter grew louder. Nevaeh clapped her hands and danced around him, her bare feet splashing water from the pool's edge. "Stop!" shouted one of the guards. Storming toward them, "Get away from him!" Nevaeh froze, startled. She stepped back, clutching her broken doll. David's voice cut through the chaos. "Leave her alone." The staff stopped instantly. Every head turned. David rarely raised his voice, but when he did, no one argued. He walked down the marble steps slowly, his eyes never leaving the girl. "Sir, she came in from the gate," the headmaid stammered. "We tried to stop her, but she made my son laugh," David said quietly. "So she stays." Oliver turned his face toward his father. "Dad, she's funny," he said softly. "Can she stay for breakfast?" The girl looked between them nervously. "I didn't mean to cause trouble, mister. I was just walking. The gate was open." David studied her. The dirt-streaked cheeks, the torn dress, the tiny feet bruised from walking barefoot. There was something fragile about her, but her eyes, deep brown and steady, held no fear. He nodded once. "Come inside. You both need to eat." The staff exchanged uneasy glances. A billionaire inviting a stray child to his table? It was unthinkable, but no one dared speak. The long dining table could seat 20, but only 3 chairs were occupied. Oliver sat beside Nevaeh, his hands tracing the pattern on his plate. She guided him, placing a spoon gently in his hand. "Like this," she said cheerfully. "My mom says soup tastes better when someone eats with you." David watched them from across the table. His phone buzzed beside his plate, but he ignored it. For once, business could wait. He cleared his throat. "What's your name?" "Nevaeh," she said, her mouth full of bread. "Nevaeh," he repeated. "That's an unusual name." She smiled proudly. "It's heaven spelled backward. My mom said it means I was her gift when the world had nothing good left." David felt something stir inside him, a flicker of warmth and pain. "And where's your mother now?" Nevaeh hesitated. "She's sleeping. She gets sick a lot. We live near the old bridge by the train tracks." Oliver turned his head, frowning. "You live outside with no house?" Nevaeh nodded. "We have a tent. It's small, but it keeps the rain out sometimes." David's jaw tightened. "And your father?" Her voice dropped. "He left before I was born." The room fell silent. The ticking of the clock filled the space between them. David finally spoke. "You shouldn't be living like that. I'll send someone to take your mother to a hospital." Nevaeh looked up sharply. "Hospitals don't like us, mister. They say we don't belong there." Oliver reached out, finding her hand. "You can stay here." "Right, Dad?" David blinked, caught off guard. "Stay?" Oliver nodded eagerly. "Just for a little, please. She makes the house sound happy." David hesitated, torn between logic and the strange feeling warming his chest. The mansion had been silent for so long that even the sound of laughter felt foreign. He finally nodded. "She can stay for breakfast. After that, we'll see." Nevaeh grinned, revealing a missing front tooth. "Thank you, mister." After breakfast, the 2 children went outside again. The morning light reflected off the glass windows, scattering tiny rainbows on the floor. Nevaeh guided Oliver to the pool's edge. "Sit here," she said. "You can feel the sun better." He tilted his face upward. "How do you know where the sun is?" She shrugged. "You don't need eyes for that. You just feel it." He smiled, mimicking her movement. "It feels warm." "Yeah," she said softly. "Warm means happy." Inside the house, David stood by the window again, watching them. For years, he had watched his son sit there alone, surrounded by everything money could buy: tutors, specialists, machines. None of them could give him what this dirty, barefoot girl just had in minutes: joy. The head maid approached cautiously. "Sir, should we call the authorities?" The child— "No," David interrupted. "She stays for now. Bring her mother food, medicine if she needs it." The maid nodded, surprised, and left. David turned back to the window. Oliver and Nevaeh were now splashing water at each other, laughing uncontrollably. Something inside him eased for the first time in years. Then Nevaeh stopped suddenly, looking toward the far end of the garden. Her laughter faded. She stared past the flowers, past the fountain, toward the ancient oak tree that towered near the back wall. Oliver tilted his head. "What's wrong?" Nevaeh didn't answer right away. She took a few slow steps forward, her small fingers clutching the broken doll tightly. "This place," she whispered. "It feels sad." Oliver frowned. "Sad?" She nodded. "Your house feels sad, mister," she called out softly toward David, who had stepped outside now. David froze mid-step. The sunlight flickered across her face, highlighting a strange seriousness in her eyes, as if she saw something invisible. Then she turned her gaze back to the oak tree. The wind rustled its branches, scattering a few dry leaves across the grass. Nevaeh's voice came out barely above a whisper. "This place remembers things." David followed her gaze toward the tree, the one his wife used to love, the one she'd called her quiet friend. For the first time, he noticed the dark patch of soil near its roots. A chill passed through him. The laughter that had filled the garden moments ago was gone, replaced by an uneasy silence. What is the connection between the oak tree and the past? If you're as curious as I am, subscribe and drop your thoughts in the comments. Stay tuned for more. And though the sun still shone brightly over the Bracewell mansion, a shadow had quietly begun to rise from the past, one that neither wealth nor power could bury again. The sun still shone brightly over the Bracewell mansion, but the warmth from yesterday was gone. The house seemed quieter, heavier, as if holding its breath. David stood by the living room window, his coffee untouched. He kept looking toward the garden where the great oak tree stood. Its branches swayed gently, whispering against the morning breeze. Something about the way Nevaeh had stared at it the day before refused to leave it his mind. She'd said, "This place remembers things." He tried to brush it off as a child's imagination, but the words clung to him like a chill he couldn't shake. The mansion was still when a faint creak came from the garden gate. A small figure slipped in, barefoot, carrying her broken doll. Nevaeh looked around carefully before tiptoeing across the grass. Oliver was already sitting by the pool, waiting. He turned his head toward the sound of her feet brushing the gravel. "I knew you'd come back," he said, smiling. Nevaeh grinned. "You sound like you were sure." "I was," he said softly. "You made my house happy yesterday." She laughed. "Then let's make it happy again." They played near the pool, tossing pebbles and guessing where each one would splash. Oliver leaned forward, listening to the ripples bounce off the walls. Nevaeh clapped when he guessed right. When they grew tired, she led him toward the garden's far end, to the oak tree. Nevaeh stopped a few steps from the trunk and crouched down, brushing the dirt with her small fingers. Oliver frowned. "What are you doing?" "Looking," she said simply. "For what?" "Something shiny." Oliver tilted his head. "What shiny thing?" Nevaeh bit her lip, thinking. "A few days ago, before I met you, I was walking behind this wall. I was hungry, so I was digging for roots. Then I found something buried in the dirt, a small necklace. It had a word on it." "What word?" She smiled faintly. "Hope." It was written all fancy, like someone loved it a lot. Oliver froze. His hands tightened around his cane. "Hope?" "Yeah," she said. "I kept it for a while. It was so pretty. But then I lost it near the bridge. I think the river took it." Oliver didn't answer. He looked toward the house instinctively, sensing the sudden tension in the air. At the mansion's open terrace above, David Bracewell stood listening. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but the word hit him like a knife to the chest. Hope. It couldn't be a coincidence. Julia had worn a necklace with that exact word, the one he gave her on their 5th anniversary. She'd called it her good luck charm. It was buried with her, or at least, it was supposed to be. David set his cup down and stepped outside. "Nevaeh," he called out. The girl turned, startled. Oliver smiled at the sound of his father's voice. "Dad, she found something." David walked closer, his expression unreadable. "You said you found a necklace." Nevaeh nodded. "Yes, sir." "What did it look like?" She thought carefully. "Silver, kind of shiny. It had small wings near the word, like angel wings. The word hope was in the middle." David's breath caught. That was Julia's necklace. Every detail perfect. "Where exactly did you find it?" he asked, voice trembling slightly. Nevaeh pointed to the base of the oak tree. "Right there. It was hiding under the dirt." David looked down, his heartbeat pounding. He saw nothing now, just grass and dry soil. "Are you sure it was here?" Nevaeh nodded. "Yes, mister. I even remember the smell, like rain and flowers. I thought maybe someone buried it on purpose." David's eyes darkened. He turned toward the mansion, his mind racing. Oliver spoke up softly, sensing his father's unease. "Dad, is something wrong?" David forced a smile. "No, son, just old memories." But the tremor in his voice said otherwise. Hospital lights, beeping monitors. Julia's face pale against the sheets. David stood helpless as nurses rushed around her. Her breathing was shallow. Sweat covered her skin. "Dr. Lang!" David shouted. "What's happening?" Dr. Victor Lang, tall, composed, too calm, placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's just a complication, Mr. Bracewell. Childbirth can be unpredictable. Please wait outside." "I'm not leaving her!" Lang's expression hardened. "You're not helping her by being here." David froze, the monitor screamed. Then, flatline. Lang turned to the nurses. "Time of death, 4:17 a.m. David stumbled forward. "No, you said it was routine. You said she was fine." Lang sighed, removing his gloves. "Sometimes these things happen, Mr. Bracewell. There's no one to blame. I'm sorry." The words had haunted him ever since. Now, 8 years later, standing beneath the same oak tree Julia had loved, David realized he had never questioned them, until a barefoot child whispered about a necklace that should have been buried with his wife. The mansion was quiet again. Everyone is asleep. The clock struck midnight. David stepped out into the garden with a flashlight. He wore a white shirt and loose trousers, the sleeves rolled up. The moonlight cast long shadows across the grass. He walked straight to the oak tree. For a long moment, he stood there staring at it, tall, ancient, and unbothered by time. Julia used to sit beneath it every afternoon, sketching in her notebook while humming soft tunes. She once told him the tree made her feel safe, like it was guarding secrets only the wind could hear. Now he wondered what secrets it had kept. He knelt down and began to dig. The soil was soft, damp from last night's rain. His hands moved quickly, dirt flying with each stroke. His flashlight flickered as he went deeper, heart pounding louder than the crickets around him. Minutes passed, nothing. He dug harder, sweat rolling down his temple. Every scrape of the shovel felt heavier, as if the earth itself resisted him. Finally, he stopped, breathing hard. He stared into the shallow hole, empty except for roots and pebbles. "Nothing," he muttered. "There's nothing here." He sat back, the memory of Julia's last words echoing in his mind. "Find the light hidden in darkness." What's buried beneath the oak tree? Why didn't David find anything? Hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Stay tuned for what's coming next. He wiped his hands on his trousers and stood, staring up at the swaying branches above. The leaves rustled faintly, whispering like voices too far to understand. Unseen by him, a figure watched from above. Mrs. Keller, the family maid. Her nightgown fluttered in the breeze as she stood on the balcony, clutching a rosary tightly in her hand. The beads trembled between her fingers. Down below, David brushed the dirt off his palms, still staring at the hole. Mrs. Keller's lips moved silently. A prayer or a curse? No one could tell. Her eyes glistened, not with pity, but fear. The oak tree's shadow stretched across the garden like a dark hand reaching for the mansion walls. And though David saw nothing in the soil, the truth was already stirring, buried just deep enough to be dangerous. Oliver sat cross-legged on the living room rug. His fingers traced the edge of a porcelain cup, while Nevaeh watched with quiet fascination. "Guess what it is," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "It's round, cold. The handle feels like a loop, a cup." "Teacup," she corrected, giggling. "Teacup," he repeated, his smile growing wider. Nevaeh reached into the small basket beside her. "What about this?" She handed him a soft piece of fabric. He rubbed it between his fingers. "It feels smooth. Maybe silk?" "Almost," she said. "It's the scarf your mom used to wear. I found it in the closet." Oliver's hands froze. "My mom's?" "Yes, it smells like flowers," she added, holding it close to her face. "Like someone who loved sunshine." Oliver lifted it to his nose. He inhaled deeply, lavender and something faintly sweet. For the first time, his face softened in a way Nevaeh had never seen. They spent hours that day exploring textures, feathers, coins, marbles, and old piano keys that hadn't been touched in years. Nevaeh would describe the colors while Oliver would imagine them in his mind. "The ball is red," she'd say. "How does red feel?" he'd ask. "Like warm hands," she'd reply. It became their game, a language between the blind and the barefoot. They sat on the steps by the pool, dipping their toes into the water. Nevaeh looked at him curiously. "Can I ask something?" "Sure," he said. "Did your eyes ever see before they stopped?" The question hit like a soft but sharp blow. Oliver turned his head slightly, as if the air had shifted. "I don't know," he said after a long pause. "Dad says I was born blind. that it just happened, she murmured. But what if they worked once, and then someone made them stop? Oliver frowned. Why would someone do that? Nevaeh shrugged, moaned. Sometimes grown-ups hide things they can't explain. Her words hung heavy in the air. That night, Oliver dreamed. At first, everything was dark, the usual quiet hum of nothingness. Then came sound, machines, beeping, a woman's breathing. Then a voice, soft, trembling, full of love. Don't let them touch him again. The words repeated, echoing through the fog of his mind. Oliver stirred in bed, gripping his blanket tightly. The darkness around him began to flicker, faint glimmers like light leaking through water. He gasped and sat upright, heart pounding. His eyelids tingled, burning faintly. He rubbed them, whispering, "What's happening to me?" David found his son sitting by the window, facing the sunlight. "Oliver," he said gently, "you're up early." Oliver turned toward the sound of his father's voice. "Dad, I saw something." David frowned. "You, what?" "I don't know how to explain it," Oliver said quickly. "It wasn't like seeing, it was like light trying to get in, just for a second." David's chest tightened. He knelt beside him. "Did it hurt?" "No, it felt warm." David placed a hand on his shoulder. "We'll call Dr. Lang. Maybe it's a good sign." But deep down, something in him hesitated. Dr. Lang arrived, dressed in his usual gray suit, his expression calm but distant. He examined Oliver, shining a light over his closed eyes, then straightened up. "There's no change," he said flatly. "But he said he sensed light," David insisted. Lang smiled thinly. "Hallucinations. The mind often creates illusions to fill what's missing." David crossed his arms. "So you're saying it's in his head?" "I'm saying don't encourage it," Lang replied sharply, "and keep that little girl away from him." David stiffened. "Why?" Lang leaned closer. "Children like her, street wanderers, they can be suggestive. She's feeding his imagination. You don't want to confuse the boy with false hope." He gathered his things and left without another word. David stood motionless, his jaw tight. Something about Lang's tone, the authority, the dismissal, brought back that same cold voice from the night Julia died. "Sometimes these things happen, Mr. Bracewell. But what if they didn't just happen?" David returned to the study and opened the locked chest beneath the old bookshelf. Inside lay Julia's belongings, her letters, sketchbooks, and a small velvet pouch. He sat at the desk, slowly opening each page of her notebook. Her handwriting was neat, delicate. "If anything happens, tell him the truth about the light." He froze. The words were faint, almost smudged. "What truth?" he muttered. He flipped through more pages. Drawings of the oak tree, notes about lullabies she wanted to sing, small sketches of a baby with dark curls and closed eyes. Then, tucked between two pages, he found a folded hospital document, one he'd never seen before. Patient, Julia Bracewell. Procedure, fetal visual correction therapy. Doctor in charge, Victor Lang. David's hands trembled. He stared at the signature, Lang's neat cursive at the bottom. "What did you do, Victor?" he whispered. Nevaeh and Oliver sat beneath the oak tree again. The air was cooler now, the first hints of evening brushing through the branches. Oliver held a small wooden toy in his hands. "You think Dad's mad at you?" Nevaeh smiled faintly. "Maybe a little. Grown-ups always get scared when truth starts showing. Oliver tilted his head. Truth? She nodded slowly. Yeah, about what happened when you were born. He frowned. You talk like you were there. She looked at him, calm, almost knowing. I was, not with my body, but I remember. What do you mean? Nevaeh leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Your mom told me things. She told me to find you. Oliver's heart skipped. My mom's dead? Nevaeh smiled sadly. Dead doesn't mean gone. She said to tell you, the light isn't gone, it's hidden. Oliver's fingers tightened around the toy. Hidden where, Yeso? Nevaeh pointed toward his chest. Inside you. He swallowed hard. Why would she say that? Because, she said softly, they took it from you before you could open your eyes. Oliver trembled. Who did? Nevaeh looked toward the mansion, the upper window glowing faintly. Your father's friend, she said, the man with the gray suit. Oliver's breath caught. Derling. She nodded once. He still comes here, but not for your health. The wind picked up, rustling the oak leaves. A faint whisper seemed to move through them, low and sorrowful, like someone crying beneath the soil. Oliver clutched Nevaeh's hand, voice shaking. What do you mean? But she only smiled, that same strange, faraway smile, and whispered, You'll see when the light comes back. What does Nevaeh know about Oliver's man, and why is Dr. Lang involved? Hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. The truth is getting closer. Stay tuned. The morning sun crept shyly over the Bracewell mansion, bathing the long corridors in pale gold. But beneath that soft light, something darker lingered. A silence that felt too aware, too heavy. Nevaeh's words still echoed in David's head. They took it from you before you could open your eyes. He hadn't slept. His mind replayed every image. Julia's trembling hand the night she died. Dr. Lang's calm voice. The necklace that was never found. And now, this mysterious little girl who seemed to know too much. He needed answers. David stood in the kitchen doorway, his voice low but firm. Mrs. Keller. The old maid turned, startled. She clutched a tray of dishes as if she'd been caught doing something wrong. Sir, I need to ask you something, he said, stepping closer. About Julia's necklace. Keller's fingers twitched. The one she always wore? Yes, the one with the word hope. Her eyes darted away. It was lost, sir, the night she... Lost where? I don't remember. David narrowed his gaze. And the oak tree, did Julia ever spend time there? Keller's face stiffened. For a moment, her voice was silent. Then she forced a nervous laugh. It's just an old tree, sir. Why all these questions? Because Nevaeh said she found something shiny buried there. At the mention of the girl's name, Keller's expression changed. Her smile vanished, replaced by something colder. That child shouldn't be here, she muttered. Street children bring trouble. David frowned. She's just a little girl. Keller turned sharply, lowering her voice. Then keep her away from that tree, Mr. Bracewell. Some things are better left where they belong. She picked up the tray and walked out, her shoes echoing down the hall. David stood there unsettled. The way she said it, better left where they belong, didn't sound like fear of superstition. It sounded like a warning. Nevaeh wandered the hallways, humming softly to herself. Her small feet made no sound against the marble floors. She carried a broken doll, one she'd found in the mansion's storage room. As she walked past the kitchen, voices caught her attention. She froze. Mrs. Keller was on the phone. Her tone was sharp, hushed, urgent. "Yes, I know," Keller said. "The girl's been talking too much. I'll handle it." Nevaeh's heart skipped. She leaned closer, her small hands gripping the wall. "I said I'll handle it," Keller snapped again. "She knows about the necklace, about hope. If Mr. Bracewell starts digging too deep, everything falls apart." The words made no sense, but the danger in them was clear. Nevaeh stepped back, her foot brushing against a tall ceramic vase by the doorway. It wobbled. Crash. The sound shattered the silence. Keller spun around, eyes wide. "Who's there?" Nevaeh tried to run, but Keller's hand caught her wrist with surprising strength. "What did you hear?" the maid hissed. Nothing," Nevaeh stammered. Keller's grip tightened. "You listen to me, little one. You keep your mouth shut. Never speak about that necklace again. Ever." Her eyes gleamed with something cold and desperate. Nevaeh whimpered, "You're hurting me." Keller released her suddenly, breathing hard. "Go back to the boy. Pretend you didn't hear a thing." Nevaeh stepped back, clutching her wrist. Her eyes glistened with tears, but there was defiance there too. "You're scared," she whispered. Keller's lips trembled. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, I do," Nevaeh said softly. "You're scared because the truth is coming." Then she turned and ran. Oliver sat quietly by his bed, fingers brushing the scarf Nevaeh had given him. The faint lavender scent reminded him of his mother. He whispered, "Mom, why can't I remember your face?" Then came a sudden pressure behind his eyes. Sharp, blinding, pulsing. He gasped and clutched his head. The room spun. The beeping sounds from his dreams returned, louder, closer. A woman's scream tore through his mind. "Don't let them." Then darkness again. Oliver's body went limp, collapsing onto the rug. A maid's scream echoed through the hallway. "Sir, it's Oliver!" David rushed up the stairs, heart pounding. He found his son lying motionless, his face pale, his small body trembling. "Call an ambulance!" he shouted. He knelt, lifting Oliver's head into his arms. "Stay with me, son. Please." Oliver's lips moved weakly. "Mom, she's crying." David froze. "What?" Before he could ask again, the paramedics arrived. The same white walls, the same sterile smell, the same fear. David stood by the bed as Dr. Lang checked the monitors. "He's stable," Lang said finally. "Just a fainting spell." "That wasn't a fainting spell," David said tightly. "He saw something. He mentioned his mother crying." Lang looked up, his face unreadable. "Dream fragments. It's common in children under emotional stress." David stepped forward. "Stop treating this like nothing. Every time he reacts like this, you call it stress or imagination or coincidence. But it's not. Something is wrong and you know it." Lang sighed. "Mr. Bracewell." "No," David snapped. "Don't Mr. Bracewell me. You were there the night Julia died. You handled her case. You handled Oliver's birth. And now my son is reliving memories he shouldn't even have. Why?" Lang's composure cracked for the briefest moment. Then he straightened. "You're exhausted. Go home. Let us handle it." "Handle it?" David's voice broke into a bitter laugh. "That's what you said when my wife died." The doctor's eyes hardened. "Careful, David." David stared at him, chest heaving. "What did you do to them?" Lang's lips curved into a faint, almost pitying smile. Some truths are better left unseen. Then he turned and walked away. Back at the mansion, Nevaeh sat quietly on the steps of the grand hall. Her broken doll lay beside her. She kept rubbing her wrist where Keller had grabbed her. Oliver's bed was empty upstairs. The air felt wrong, tense, waiting. Mrs. Keller moved about the hallway, pretending to dust, but her hands shook. From the corner of her eye, she saw Nevaeh watching her, silent, unblinking. Keller muttered under her breath, "She'll ruin everything." Then she pressed her rosary against her lips and whispered a trembling prayer. David returned from the hospital, his eyes dark with sleeplessness. He stood in the doorway of Oliver's empty room, feeling the silence press down on him. He looked at the small blindfold sitting on the bedside table, the one the doctors used to cover Oliver's eyes as a child. Some truths are better left unseen. Lang's words wouldn't leave his head. David clenched his fists. "We'll see about that." What's the truth David is about to uncover? And why is Dr. Lang so defensive? Hit like, subscribe, and share your theories in the comments. Stay tuned. The storm is just beginning. Outside, a storm was brewing. Nevaeh, awake in the servants' quarters, stared out the window toward the oak tree. Lightning flashed briefly, illuminating something metallic half buried beneath the roots. She gasped softly. The light faded and darkness returned. She whispered to herself, "The light's coming back." The storm that had threatened all night finally broke. Rain pounded against the tall windows of the Bracewell mansion, tracing thin rivers down the glass. Nevaeh sat by the window, clutching her broken doll and staring toward the oak tree. The same place lightning had revealed something glinting beneath the soil. She whispered again, "The light's coming back." David's car was still parked in the driveway when Nevaeh found him. His eyes were hollow, his shirt still wrinkled from the night before. "Mr. Bracewell," she said softly, tugging at his sleeve, "I need to show you something." He turned, startled. "Nevaeh? What are you doing here, Yashura? You should be resting." "It's about your wife," she said, "and the necklace." David froze. The word necklace hit him like a gust of wind. "What do you know about that?" Nevaeh met his gaze without fear. "You won't believe me unless you see it." Her tone was steady, too steady for a 5-year-old. David hesitated, then nodded. "All right, show me." The rain had softened the soil. The ground was damp, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and old memories. Oliver sat nearby on a bench, wrapped in a blanket. He had begged to come along. "I can feel it," he murmured. "Something's here." David glanced at him, torn between confusion and hope. "Feel what, son?" "The same warmth I feel when I dream of Mom," Oliver said quietly. Nevaeh knelt by the base of the oak tree and pressed her small hands into the mud. "It's right here," she said, "where the roots twist like fingers." David knelt beside her, using a small garden spade. Together they dug, layer after layer of earth, the rain soaking through their clothes. The deeper they went, the thicker the soil became, until the spade struck something solid with a dull clang. David stopped. "Wait," Nevaeh whispered. "That's it." They brushed away the dirt. A rusted metal box wrapped in decayed cloth lay wedged between the roots. David's breath caught. His hands trembled as he lifted it from the ground. The box was small, the kind used to hold letters or keepsakes. The cloth fell apart as he unwrapped it. Inside were 3 items: a delicate silver necklace with the word hope engraved on the pendant, a folded water-stained letter, and a small flash drive sealed in a plastic pouch. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the soft rustling of rain and Oliver's unsteady breathing. David stared at the necklace. Julia's necklace, the one he'd bought for her when she was pregnant. She wore it the night before she died, he said quietly. I never saw it again. Nevaeh nodded. She wanted you to find it. David unfolded the letter with shaking hands. The handwriting was unmistakable, Julia's elegant, looping script. He began to read aloud. My dearest David, if you are reading this, then my fears have come true. I discovered something at the hospital, something about Dr. Lang's project. He calls it infant adaptation therapy. But it isn't therapy, it's chemical testing. They're using an experimental serum, a formula that affects the eyes and the brain. He told me it could enhance development, but when I refused to let him use it on our child, everything changed. David, I think they've already given it to me. I've been feeling dizzy. My vision blurs, and Lang keeps telling me it's normal. It isn't. If anything happens to me or our baby, look for the light hidden in darkness. The truth will be buried, but not lost. Remember, love is the only thing they can't poison. Yours forever, Julia. David's voice cracked as he reached the last line. The letter trembled in his hands. Rain slid down his face, but it wasn't rain anymore. He looked at Nevaeh, his voice barely above a whisper. She knew. She knew they were going to kill her. Nevaeh's small hand rested on his arm. She left it for you to find. David pressed his fingers to the necklace, clutching it to his chest. All these years, I thought it was fate. I thought I'd lost her to chance. Oliver's voice cut through the rain, small and trembling. Dad? David turned. Oliver had fallen to his knees, clutching his head. Oliver, the boy screamed, his voice raw with pain. My eyes, it's burning. David dropped the letter and ran to him, holding his shoulders. What's happening? Talk to me. I can't. It's too bright. Nevaeh stood frozen, her eyes wide. It's the light, she whispered. It's waking up. Oliver's breathing grew fast, ragged. His eyelids fluttered, and behind them, faint flashes of light pulsed like trapped lightning. He gasped. Images flooded his mind in a blur of sound and color. A woman's hand gripping his tiny fingers. A bright room, machines humming, and Dr. Lang's voice saying, administer the dose. Then his mother's scream, don't let them touch him again. The words tore through his mind, louder, sharper, until the pain was unbearable. Oliver screamed again, and then went still. David held his son tightly. Oliver, look at me. Please look at me. Oliver's breathing steadied. Slowly he opened his eyes, not wide, but enough for David to see something he hadn't seen in 10 years. A faint shimmer of light reflected in them. Dad, Oliver whispered. I saw her. David's heart stopped. Who? Mom. Nevaeh leaned closer, whispering. What did she say? Oliver's voice shook. She was holding me, and they hurt her. The rain slowed, fading into a gentle drizzle. The garden fell silent. David turned toward the house, toward the windows that once made him feel safe. Now they felt like eyes watching him. The truth is out, but what will David do next? If you're as shocked as I am, subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comments. The mystery isn't over. Stay tuned for what happens next. He gripped Julia's letter in one hand, the necklace in the other. No more secrets, he said quietly. But deep inside the mansion, behind one of those glowing windows, A shadow moved, unseen listening, and in the reflection of the glass, Dr. Lang's face appeared for a fleeting moment before vanishing into the dark. The rain had stopped, but the storm hadn't. It followed David Bracewell all the way to the hospital, inside his chest, in the pulse that hammered through his veins. He didn't wait at the reception desk. He didn't care for permission. He pushed open the office door marked Dr. Victor Lang so hard it slammed against the wall. Lang looked up, startled. "David." "Save it," David snapped. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice rough. "I want the truth, all of it." Lang rose from behind his desk, trying to sound calm. "You're upset. Sit down." "Don't patronize me," David roared. "You lied to me about Julia, about my son. You said she died from complications. But she wrote that letter before you killed her." Lang's face hardened. "Killed her?" He gave a quiet, incredulous laugh. "David, that letter is a forgery. You're letting grief twist your memory." David slammed his fist on the desk. "Don't lie to me again." Lang's composure cracked for a moment, then returned. "Listen to yourself. You're quoting the words of a child, a homeless girl. You're chasing ghosts." David reached into his coat pocket and threw the flash drive onto the table. It slid across the polished surface and stopped in front of Lang. Lang froze. His jaw tightened, his eyes flicking briefly toward the drive. Not with confusion, but recognition. "You know what's on it," David said quietly. Lang forced a smirk. "No, I don't." "Then watch it." David snatched the doctor's laptop and plugged in the drive. The screen blinked to life. Lang moved to stop him, but David shoved him back into the chair. The video began to play. A grainy hospital feed filled the screen. Time-stamped 10 years ago. Julia Braithwell sat in a hospital gown, her face pale but fierce. Her eyes burned with defiance. "You promised safety, not experiments," she shouted. Lang, younger but unmistakable, stood across from her. His voice was calm, too calm. "Julia, this is for the greater good," he said. "You and your baby will help us advance neonatal adaptation by decades." "You're lying," she spat. "You already administered the serum without my consent. I can feel it. I can feel what it's doing to me." Lang stepped closer. "You're overreacting. Everything is under control." "Control?" Julia's voice broke. "You said David would be here." Lang smiled coldly. "Your husband will never know." David's breath hard. His knees nearly gave way. The camera showed Julia backing away, clutching her stomach, trembling. "If anything happens to me or my baby, you'll pay for this." Then the door opened. 2 nurses entered, faces masked, carrying syringes. Julia screamed. The video glitched, static flickering. Then it went dark. Lang lunged forward, slamming the laptop shut. "That's enough." David grabbed his arm. "You murdered her." Lang tried to pull free, but David shoved him back again. "You killed her and turned my son into your experiment." "Listen to me," Lang snapped, his mask of composure slipping entirely. "You don't understand the science. It wasn't supposed to happen like that." "What wasn't supposed to happen?" David demanded. Lang's breathing grew fast. "She was supposed to survive the delivery. The serum was designed to suppress fetal distress during birth. But she fought it. She fought me." David's voice dropped to a whisper. "You injected my wife with something that blinded my son." Lang's lips trembled. "It was an accident." David lunged, his fist connected with Lang's jaw. The doctor fell against the table, scattering papers and instruments across the floor. "You call this an accident?" David shouted, grabbing him by the collar. "You took everything from me." Lang's hand groped for the flash drive. He seized it, then stumbled toward the desk, slamming it against the edge in a desperate attempt to break it. David tackled him again. The drive skidded across the floor. Outside, voices shouted, security guards rushing toward the commotion. Lang kicked David off, yelling, "You'll destroy yourself chasing this!" But David was already on his feet, blood running from his lip. "You destroyed her." The guards burst in. Two grabbed David, pulling him back. "Sir, calm down!" "Arrest him," David shouted. "He's a murderer." Lang wiped blood from his chin, straightening his coat. "You're insane," he muttered. "You've lost touch with reality." Then one of the guards bent down and picked up the flash drive, handing it to the hospital administrator who had followed them in. "What's this?" the administrator asked. David's voice was hoarse. "Evidence." The administrator plugged it into his own laptop. The same footage appeared. Julia's face, her scream, Lang's confession. Gasps filled the room. Lang lunged again, but two guards restrained him. "Dr. Victor Lang," the administrator said coldly, "you're under arrest until the authorities review this evidence." Lang's calm exterior shattered completely. "You don't understand," he reiterated. "This research was meant to save humanity. We were creating children who could survive anything." David's voice broke through the chaos. "You turned my son into a test subject." Lang's expression flickered. Not guilt, but madness. And he did survive. He's proof the serum works. David punched him again before the guards could stop him. Lang crumpled, blood trickling from his nose. Sirens wailed outside. The police had arrived. David stood in the corridor, still breathing heavily. His hands shook, his knuckles raw. Through the glass, he watched as officers handcuffed Lang and let him out. The doctor's face was pale but defiant. As they reached the doorway, Lang turned his head slightly, meeting David's eyes. His voice was calm again, almost whisper-soft. "You think she died in childbirth?" David froze. Lang smiled faintly, blood on his teeth. "She didn't." Then the officers pulled him away. David stood motionless, the sound of rain beginning again outside. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. She didn't. What did Lang mean by that? If you're as shocked as I am, hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. The truth is unraveling. Stay tuned for what happens next. The words looped over and over. If Julia didn't die in childbirth, then where was she? Back at the mansion, thunder rolled again over the horizon. Nevaeh sat beside Oliver's bed, humming softly as the boy slept. She stopped mid-song, her eyes drifting toward the window. The reflection on the glass shimmered faintly, a silhouette of a woman standing under the oak tree, her hair waving in the storm. Nevaeh whispered, "She's waiting." And outside, lightning flashed once more, illuminating the garden where the soil had been disturbed, as if something beneath it was still moving. The storm had passed, but the air over the Bracewell mansion still felt charged, heavy, waiting. David hadn't slept since the confrontation with Dr. Lang. His mind wouldn't stop replaying those last words. "You think she died in childbirth?" She didn't. He sat alone in his study, Julia's letter open beside a mug of untouched coffee. The flash drive rested next to it, the faint reflection of his face distorted across its surface. Outside, dawn broke through the fog like a reluctant confession. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in 10 years. Detective Rains, the lead investigator from Julia's case. Bracewell? The detective's voice rasped through the line. It's been a long time. I'm reopening my wife's case, David said flatly. Rains hesitated. You already know the verdict. Postpartum complications. The verdict was a lie, David said. Her autopsy report was changed. The detective was silent for a long moment. Then quietly, meet me in my office at 9. The city morgue smelled of old paper, disinfectant, and secrets. Rains pulled an old film from a dusty cabinet. Case Julia Bracewell, 10 years ago. He dropped it on the table between them. I shouldn't be showing you this. David flipped through the pages. His eyes froze on the original autopsy note. Handwritten, signed by one Dr. Patel. Cause of death, respiratory failure induced by chemical toxicity. But the next page, the official report, read something entirely different. Cause of death, cardiac arrest due to labor complications. David's voice trembled. This was changed after the fact. Rains nodded grimly. Lang had influence. He funded several medical research programs at the time. It wouldn't be hard for him to have this edited. David leaned back, rubbing his face. He said she didn't die in childbirth. He was right. He poisoned her. The staff moved quietly that morning, aware something was wrong. David's silence filled the air like smoke. But one person wasn't silent. Mrs. Keller. She packed hurriedly in her room, stuffing cash into a handbag, her hands trembling. Her eyes darted to the window every few seconds. When she opened the door, 2 security men stood waiting. Mrs. Keller, one said, Mr. Bracewell wants to see you. She froze. In the study, David sat behind the desk, Julia's photograph beside him. Keller entered slowly, wringing her hands. Where were you going? He asked quietly. I just needed air, sir, she stammered. You were running, David said. Why? Her lip trembled. I don't know what you mean. He opened a file on the desk. You signed off on Julia's death certificate as the attending domestic witness. You told police she died peacefully. Did you lie for Lang? Keller shook her head, tears already forming. Please, sir, I didn't have a choice. Then tell me what really happened. She sank to her knees, sobbing. He said it was Mercy. David's voice hardened. Who? Dr. Lang. Her words came out in gasps. Julia was alive after the birth. Weak, but breathing. He said her body was rejecting the formula. That she'd die slowly and painfully if he didn't help her. So he killed her? Keller nodded, choking on her words. He injected something into her IV. She begged me to stop him. I froze. David's fist clenched, knuckles white. He paid me afterward, Keller continued. Said if I kept quiet, the boy would live a safe life. But if I spoke, she couldn't finish. David stared at her, his eyes filled with disbelief and rage. And Oliver, you watched him too? Keller nodded again, yapping harder. Lang told me to report if he ever showed signs of sight. He said blindness meant the serum stayed dormant. If the boy could see, it meant the formula was waking up. David's voice broke. You spied on my son? I'm sorry, Keller cried. He told me it was for the child's safety, that he was better off blind. I swear I didn't know it would go this far. The room fell silent except for her trembling sobs. David stood, turning away from her. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Get out of my sight." Keller looked up, eyes red. "Please, sir, go." Two guards stepped forward. She didn't resist as they led her out. When the door closed, David finally broke. His hands gripped the desk as silent tears fell. He whispered to the photo, "Julia, I failed you, but I'll make this right." That night, David sat in the study surrounded by medical journals, research papers, and the decrypted files from the flash drive. The serum's chemical structure glowed on his screen, complex, dangerous, ahead of its time. He contacted every international expert he could find: geneticists, neurochemists, ocular specialists. Emails flew out like desperate prayers. Subject: urgent. Confidential medical formula for review. Attached was the full data Lang had tried to erase. His message was simple. "My son was blinded by this. Help me undo what was done." Nevaeh knelt beside Oliver's bed, her small hands folded. She whispered softly, "God, please bring back his light. Let him see again. Let him see the truth." The room was quiet except for the slow rhythm of Oliver's breathing. Then suddenly his fingers twitched. Nevaeh opened her eyes. "Ollie." He turned his head slightly toward her voice. His eyelids fluttered, just a little. And then, for the first time in years, his pupils reacted. A faint shimmer reflected off them, catching the light from the bedside lamp. Nevaeh gasped. Oliver blinked once, twice. "Nevaeh," he whispered. Her heart raced. "I'm here." He smiled weakly. "I can see light again." Tears filled her eyes. "You can see?" "It's faint, but it's there, Yi." She pressed his hand between hers. "It's coming back, just like I said." Downstairs, David's phone buzzed. An email notification. Subject: preliminary analysis. Formula reversal possible. He looked up, eyes wide, as thunder rumbled far in the distance. For the first time in a decade, hope didn't feel like a lie. What's lurking beneath the oak tree? Is the truth finally coming to light? Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. The answers are getting closer, but outside the mansion, beneath the oak tree, the soil shifted again, as if something beneath was waking up. The oak tree outside the Bracewell mansion no longer stood as a shadow of guilt. It became a marker of time, the place where secrets had been buried and where hope began to breathe again. Months passed, the snow melted, the garden bloomed, and inside the house, life returned, fragile, uncertain, but alive. Oliver's treatment began in early spring. The best specialists from Geneva, Tokyo, and Cape Town flew in, drawn by David's relentless persistence and the encrypted formula from Julia's files. The once quiet mansion was now filled with new sounds. Machines humming, doctors speaking softly, and the faint tapping of Oliver's footsteps as he relearned movement under the therapist's guidance. The dining room became a recovery hub. The guest room became a lab. The walls, once heavy with silence, now echoed with cautious laughter. David lived every day between hope and fear. He saw flashes of Julia in every breakthrough, the curl of Oliver's smile, the tilt of his head when listening to Nevaeh. And Nevaeh, she never left his side. She read to him, guided him through exercises, and whispered prayers when the pain became unbearable. Sometimes in the middle of the night, when Oliver's body convulsed from reaction to the new serum, she held his hand and sang softly to a hymn her mother used to hum. The doctors called the progress miraculous. Oliver could now detect shadows, distinguish brightness, and even trace outlines of faces in dim light. But progress came at a price. Each injection triggered burning sensations in his eyes and migraines that lasted hours. There were days when he screamed, not from pain, but from frustration. "I hate this," he cried one afternoon, tearing the gauze off his eyes. "I don't want to see if it's going to hurt every time." David knelt before him, voice trembling. "I know it's hard, son, but you're fighting for what your mother wanted." "She wanted me to live, not suffer," Oliver said through gritted teeth. David's silence was an admission. From the corner, Nevaeh whispered, "She wanted you to see the truth." Oliver looked toward her voice, his breathing slowed. "Then stay here when it hurts. I only feel brave when you're near." She smiled faintly. "Then I'll never leave." One evening, while David was reviewing Julia's archived patient files, he stumbled upon a name that stopped him cold. Adele M. Rivers, assistant nurse, Bracewell Foundation Research Wing. Next to the signature was a photograph, a woman with Nevaeh's eyes. He walked into the living room holding the file. "Nevaeh," he said softly, "was your mother's name Adele?" Her expression froze. "How do you know that?" "She worked with Julia. Here." Nevaeh took the file with shaking hands. Her eyes widened at the photo. "That's her. She disappeared when I was 8. David sat beside her. Julia trusted her, said she was the only nurse who questioned Lang. Tears welled in Nevaeh's eyes. Mama used to say she was part of something wrong, that she wanted to fix it before it hurt anyone. David's voice was low. She tried. And when she vanished, Lang covered it up. He probably silenced her for speaking out. Nevaeh clenched the file. "Then I'll finish what she started." From that night, her purpose became clear. She wasn't just caring for Oliver. She was righting her mother's unfinished fight. By summer, the house had changed again. The once sterile hallways smelled of home-cooked meals and fresh paint. Oliver walked unassisted now, guided by faint shapes and the sound of Nevaeh's laughter. Some days he sat by the window, describing what little he could see. "The trees look like ghosts in green coats," he once said. Nevaeh giggled. "That's poetry, not medicine." David, standing by the doorway, smiled for the first time in months. But every smile carried a shadow, the oak tree outside still standing watch. He often found himself drawn to it late at night, staring at the mound of soil that never seemed to stay still. It was as if something beneath waited for permission to rest. September came with thunder. That night, rain lashed against the windows and the wind howled through the corridors. The power flickered, plunging the mansion into darkness before the generator hummed back to life. Oliver lay in bed, restless. His dreams had been strange lately. Flashes of light, voices calling from beyond the dark. His mother's silhouette framed in fire. Downstairs, David sorted through another pile of Julia's documents. The generator's hum was oddly uneven, sputtering. Then came a faint whisper, a woman's voice carried by the storm. He looked up sharply, but the hallway was empty. Nevaeh was in Oliver's room when he stirred, eyes fluttering beneath half-bandaged lids. "Ollie?" she whispered. He reached out blindly. "It's so bright." She frowned. "The lamp's off." "No, it's not that. It's..." He paused, breathing deeply. "It's like something's opening inside my head." Outside, thunder cracked violently. David rushed upstairs. "Is he all right?" Before Nevaeh could answer, Oliver sat up straight, eyes wide open. For a moment, his pupils reflected light, faint but unmistakable. "Dad," he said, voice shaking. David froze. I'm here, son. Oliver's lips trembled. I can see your eyes. The words hung in the air like a prayer answered. Nevaeh covered her mouth, tears streaming. David took a slow step forward, unsure if it was real. Say that again, he whispered. Oliver smiled through the tears. I can see your eyes, Dad. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the room in white light, and for a heartbeat, the shadow of a woman appeared behind them in the reflection of the mirror. Julia, smiling. The thunder roared, the lights went out, and from beneath the oak tree the soil split open, releasing something the night had kept for far too long. The lights waking up. But what's been hidden beneath the oak tree? Don't miss what happens next. Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. The ground outside the mansion had stopped moving by dawn. What the storm unearthed wasn't a monster or a ghost. It was memory, a reminder that even buried truths have roots that refuse to die. When David and the others went out the next morning, they found the oak tree's base exposed, and beneath it a rusted box. Inside lay fragments of Julia's belongings, a locket, her hospital bracelet, and a single folded note in her handwriting. If he ever sees the light again, it means love won. David pressed the note to his chest and wept for the first time without restraint. The doctors called it a medical anomaly. David called it a miracle. Oliver's vision continued to sharpen over the following weeks. What began as faint shapes became outlines, then faces, then color. For the first time, he saw Nevaeh's face clearly, the curls of her hair, the warmth in her eyes. You're prettier than I imagined, he said with a shy smile. Nevaeh blushed, and you're taller than I thought. David stood at the doorway watching them, his heart full. The laughter echoing through the halls sounded like a language the house had forgotten. The mansion that had once mourned was alive again. The sterile walls replaced with family portraits, sunlight streaming through open curtains, and the smell of Julia's favorite flowers, hydrangeas, placed by the staircase. David knew healing wasn't just about sight, it was about closure. He contacted private investigators and gave them one mission: find Nevaeh's mother. Weeks passed before the report arrived. When the detective slid the file across the table, David hesitated before opening it. Inside were photos, an abandoned medical site in the outskirts of the city. Among the recovered remains were 2 identification tags, Adele M. Rivers and J. Bracewell. The truth was cruel but freeing. Lang had buried the women who defied him in the same place, bound by courage and sacrifice. When David told Nevaeh, she broke down in silence. Then she said softly, "She died doing what was right. That's all I needed to know." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Your mother and Julia gave us light. We'll make sure they're never forgotten." The memorial took place under the oak tree, the same place that had once held secrets. Now, it held peace. 2 marble plaques stood side by side, one for Julia Bracewell, one for Adele Rivers. David read aloud from Julia's recovered note, his voice steady. If he ever sees the light again, it means love won. He looked up at the crowd, the doctors, the staff, and neighbors who had come to witness. Love won, he said simply. Nevaeh placed a small bouquet at the base of the plaques. Thank you, Mama, she whispered. Oliver stood behind her, his eyes glistening as the morning sun broke through the clouds. He reached out, guiding her hand to rest on his. They're both watching, he said. David believed it too. Life settled into rhythm again. David funded Nevaeh's education, sending her to the best preparatory school nearby. When she protested, saying she didn't want charity, he told her, "This isn't charity, it's a promise. You gave my son faith. Let me give you your future." She hugged him tightly, calling him Uncle David for the first time. Oliver began attending therapy sessions to strengthen his eyes. He could now read large print books and see faces from across the room. Each improvement felt like another piece of Julia's love returning through him. In the evenings, they all sat together by the fireplace, talking, laughing, or sometimes just sitting in silence, grateful for the calm that followed years of storms. By late summer, the mansion was alive with color again. The roses by the pool had bloomed, and the sound of birds returned. Oliver ran through the garden, chasing Nevaeh as she darted between the hedges, laughing. "You can't hide now, huh?" he shouted playfully. She turned, teasing. "You sure about that, Sharp Eyes?" He grinned, breathing hard. "I can see you." "Then prove it," she laughed, darting away again. He followed, his vision clear enough to trace her silhouette against the sunlight. The laughter that filled the air was loud and real. No fear, no pain, just life. When he caught up to her near the pool, he grabbed her hand, both of them panting and laughing. She looked up at him with a proud smile. "You found your light." He nodded. "You helped me find it." From the patio, David watched them, a glass of tea in his hand. His hair had turned a little grayer, but his eyes held peace. He whispered to the breeze, "Julia, our boy can see." The wind rustled gently, brushing the curtains and carrying the faint scent of hydrangeas. For a fleeting moment, he felt her presence beside him. Warm, silent, smiling. Oliver turned toward the patio, waving. "Come join us." David raised his hand in return, his voice soft. "In a minute, son." He looked toward the oak tree, once a grave, now a symbol, and for the first time in years, there was no darkness left beneath the oak tree, only light. What a journey it has been. The light has returned, but their story doesn't end here. If you've enjoyed this journey with us, make sure to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. What's your take on the story? We'd love to hear from you.